Hello. Transition and detransition from a cosmological perspective. And when I say cosmological, I'm not talking really about reading the stars and that kind of stuff, but more of a philosophical point of view, I guess. And the reason this speaks to me is because, like a lot of other detransitioners, I often think about why did I transition in the first place? Why do I feel the way I do? Why did those feelings change and later led to detransition? And that kind of stuff. And I think it's important to kind of do that reflection yourself. And for me, the framework to think about that kind of stuff for me, and what has been most helpful is through like a larger universal perspective about humanity and about how the universe works and that kind of stuff. And I've seen similar things with a lot of other people. For example, a lot of detransitioners seek religion as a way to make sense of their lives now that everything changed. And I think that's great, and it can help to bring a bigger purpose or bigger meaning, I guess, to everything. Because if you're not grounded in anything, it just seems so pointless. Everything, like why did I go through all this, and what did I learn from it if there's nothing more to life than just this single life we're living now. It just seems like a complete waste of time in that point of view. But so yeah, I think both religion and other kind of frameworks to think about this is very helpful. And for me, I come from a partly religious family and partly not. Religion doesn't really speak to me in its organized form. I think there are many true cores to it, but what bothers me is the organization and the dogmas around it. That it's a fixed framework, and it's a set of rules that you're expected to live by or look up to. And I guess I'm just too much of a rebel, I guess, to abide by someone else's set of rules, and I like to think things through myself. And not that you can't do that in religion as well, but still everything you do in religion is in relation to the Bible and those fixed texts. And I think that's helpful for some people, and it speaks to a certain way of thinking about it. But in the end, for me, it's a bit more restrictive than I wish, and it reminds me a bit too much about the whole transition and the gender ideologies, not in substance but in the way it operates. So what I found for myself is this cosmological perspective that I call it, and it's well, it's largely based on a view of humanity as something inherently good. You can't be cynical about humanity in the end if you have this point of view, because it's an acknowledgement of all the love and compassion and understanding and logic that is present all through the universe, everywhere you look. Actually, there's so much logic out in nature. And I think to have this cynical view of humanity as something bad or something that is like a cancer on the earth, it's not helpful for yourself or for finding the truth about these bigger pictures, because everything is in nature has its purpose, and so has humanity. So that's like the first sort of base for this view, and I think the second one would be the fact that life is eternal. And what I've come to realize is, much like Christianity, actually, life has a purpose, and it has it's supposed to lead somewhere, and you're supposed to learn things, and you're supposed to have a relationship with God, actually. And in my view, God is not maybe the way Christianity looks at it, like this man in the sky, like a literal being somewhere, be it in the sky or some other dimension or wherever he is. Like, he's not one singular being. God, in my point of view, is the universe as a whole. And it's very much a real thing, God, in that point of view, but it's not like a thing you can touch or say it's there, or he behaves this way or that way. He's eternity. Like, eternity and God are the same things, and the universe and God are the same things. And because God encompasses both eternity and the universe, everything, both in the physical form world and the not physical realm of eternity, and everything that is in our mind and soul and so on, he is basically everything. And because of that, you can't really describe it, because the minute you describe something that is everything and something that is eternal, you lose that infinity aspect of what it actually is. So that's also an important sort of baseline to have, to take into consideration. It's the eternity of life. And this eternity, it manifests both in the way universe operates, that it never has a start or an end, and it manifests as well as individual life forms like you and me. So in order for the point that I'm trying to get all throughout this is the basis of transition and detransition for me. And in order to get to that, you kind of also has to be willing to entertain this thought that we ourselves are eternal, and hence have some sort of soul or me or I or whatever you want to call it, that is eternal, and that does not end with this life. And this view also makes a lot of sense in a lot of other bigger picture questions that are floating around in the philosophical and the religious realm. As soon as you sort of accept or entertain the thought that yes, we are eternal and we can go on through different lives, as soon as you sort of start to think in that way, everything just makes sense in these bigger questions. But I'm not going to go into like all of those sort of aspects of it. I kind of wanted to focus just on transition and detransition in this video, because that's something that is maybe most personal to me, because it affected my life so much. And yeah, it in this view, when you go through life after life after life, you work in cyclical motions, sort of. You like everything in nature is sort of divided into these cyclical motions. So you have a beginning, a building up, a peak, the start of the downfall, and the decomposition, and then it starts all over again. And this is on like incredibly large time scales, like with Earth, it has a chaotic beginning and a gradual build up into something more stable, some sort of peak where life is just sprudeling out of every corner of the Earth. And maybe one day you'll also have a sort of building down of that sort of thing, or like I don't want to say like the end of civilization, that kind of thing, but I think it's more gradual than that. It's the start of sort of the end cycle of the Earth. And you have it on much shorter time scales, like for example one day, the dawn, the sun rises, you have a noon, you have an afternoon, you have a midnight, and it just repeats itself like that. And so this can be applied to our own lives as well. So we have, during one lifetime, we have childhood and adulthood, and we have some sort of peak of activity. I think it's around 30 years of age, maybe somewhere there. And you have a sort of stable period where you're more or less just enjoying the noon of your life. And then you have the older days and eventually death. But this is, like I said, this is one life, and it's from the view of your organism, the one you're living in right now. But just like in the universe, everything happens in cyclical motions, different scales. This also happens to one's own life. So one life that we're having now, this is one scale of this cyclical motion. So it's one very short time. And I believe after one life you're reborn into another, and you start the cyclical motion again. And so you have a lot of these small cyclical motions, one after another, like that, to gradually learn and develop and develop, I would say. You're developing yourself basically throughout all of these lives, and it's like a staircase basically. You're constantly building on your experiences and trying to make better all the time. And this is something beautiful, and it's something that makes the sort of baseline of the universe filled with love, I think, because it gives everyone the opportunity to all the time learn from mistakes and move on and be better. But this also means that you can divide this staircase into a lot of other cyclical motions, because like I said, the cyclical motions, they happen on all different time scales. So just one life is one cyclical motions, and then if you bunch a whole series of lives together, you get another cyclical motion. And to get to I struggle to get to my point, but it's about transition and detransition, and to sort of make sense of the emotions that 100% encapsulates me and a lot of other people who have gone through this, are these emotions about masculinity and femininity. And it's so fundamental, the way you feel this. It's not like a conscious thought that you can just turn on or turn off. It's something that affects our lives to such an extent that people go through invasive surgeries and cross-sex hormones and basically try to change your whole body. Like, that's a major thing. You don't do that just because of some thought activity among the small neurons and electrodes or whatnot in your brain. It's like a deep rooted feeling or emotion about masculinity or femininity. And this ties back into these cyclical motions in the way that throughout a whole, let's say, era of the Earth's development, we as individuals go through thousands of lives, maybe, from the dawn of Earth until the end of Earth, and so this, in a way, this is one short cycle for the Earth, because it's like one life for the Earth from the build-up to the downfall, but this cyclical motions that is one lap for the Earth contains thousands of small lives for each one of us. So this is, like, for my life, I have one cycle now in this lifetime, but I'm also part of this much greater cycle that the Earth itself is part of. And so the way I think it works basically is that you have two sort of poles, the masculine and the feminine. And these are very basic, and they are present in all life forms, basically. And it's not something trivial, it's something very much part of the fabric of life and of the universe. Everything that can be experienced because of these two poles, masculinity and femininity. And so they're incredibly important for the way the universe operates. And they are sort of, they're big, they're too big to to alter just in one lifetime, let's put it that way. So the only way they can be altered is through a much larger cyclical motion than just one lifetime. So this is why I would say both the TRAs and the gender criticals and basically everyone that has an opinion on the gender stuff in a way are kind of right, because in one, you can try to emulate the opposite sex in one life, but you can't change your sex in one life. But nevertheless, there are two poles in the universe, which means it has to, on some time scale, be possible for nature to switch these around. Because among the animals, you have very clear feminine beings and very clear masculine beings. And so nothing can just be out of thin air. Everything has to develop. So these very clear masculine animals, they have to have been developed into that state, as long as, just the same as with the feminine beings, they have to have been developed into it. And everything that is developed into something also has to have a history behind it and a path to it. So in that way, I think you definitely can switch between the feminine and the masculine, but it doesn't happen on this time scale. It happens on one of the larger time scales. So myself, I was born a male, which means I was and I will be a male in this whole cyclical motion that I'm part of right now. That is not this lifetime, but it's thousands of lifetime. So this cyclical motion, I'm in the masculine sphere, and this is very difficult to explain, in a way that, because I have these, it's much clearer in my mind how I see this, but it's, let's put it this way, it's, they're both present in everyone. It's just that one has the upper hand, whereas the other is pushed down. And this is what I'm talking about with animals. It's very clear which pole is the dominant one. And among humans, it's also very clear so far. But I think what's happening now with all the trans and the detrans stuff is a sort of wiggling between these poles among both females and males. The development of our species has sort of come to a point where our intelligence, our minds, the way we think, has sort of reached some sort of we're still animals, but we're sort of hinging on like some sort of development that will lead us one day, not tomorrow, not in 100 years, maybe in a few thousand years, that will lead us into something that is not so much into a life form that is not so alike the animal life form that we're still part of. And I think this development that we're now on, this track to this point, is sort of making these masculine and feminine poles shift around a bit and causes disturbance. And I think this is what's happening with the whole trans phenomenon. In some individuals, for one reason or the other, we have repressed our dominant pole. And this repression sort of forces this opposite pole, be it masculine or feminine, into an early emergence into some of us. And I think this is the root cause actually to a lot of weird things that are happening in the sexual sphere, because no one can deny that human sexuality has sort of taken a hit in the last couple of 100 years or so, or even the last 50 or 60 years. This is not normal in nature. Like if you look at animal species, they're nowhere near the percentage of sexual deviance that is so present among humans. And this also has to do with these poles being imbalanced. The human species is sort of in we're in this new developmental arc, and it's causing a lot of birth pains, let's say. So everything that is transforming or getting developed into something new, much like the physical birth, has to go through like these weird and tough and testing times before the development actually starts. And I think that's what's happening with a lot of the sexual deviance that is going on right now. And also I want to point out that even though I call it sexual deviance, I'm not actually putting any moral judgment in that. So I was a trans woman myself for a lot of years, and I'm not saying this to put myself or other trans people down, because it's moral neutral to me, but it is a fact that it's some sort of deviance from the normal. And okay, yeah, it's boring to talk about what's normal and not normal, but it's pretty clear. Like we have every human has this intuition of what is normal and not normal in the sexual sphere, and that's completely fine, I think. And it's it doesn't mean that someone with a sexual deviance is a bad person or anything like that. It can manifest in pretty awful and horrific ways, sexual deviance, but it doesn't have to. And it's I'm simply talking about the phenomena. I think the phenomena is based in some sort of imbalance between the masculine and the feminine. Let's see, I've been talking too long already, but I just want to finish by maybe saying, oh man, there are too many things to be said around this, but I have to make more videos. So, but it's not what I'm trying to say about this developmental arc that I think humanity is on right now. Is I think we're just like the plants. A lot of plants are what's the word, like they're not sexed in the same way animals are sexed. A lot of plants can reproduce on their own, and they can they're not male or female, but some plants are, and that's very interesting to me. So I think this is kind of where this division between male and female, between the two poles, start in the plant kingdom, basically. So some plants develop to the male pole and some plants develop to the female pole, and then this division between the sexes gets even more pronounced in the animal kingdom. This is where the poles are the furthest apart from each other, and the biggest difference between the poles. This is in the animal kingdom. And I think because of our, let's call it spiritual development, even though you can argue that we're not very spiritually developed right now, but we do have a consciousness that is more advanced than a lot of animals. And I think this is the key to sort of explore where this new developmental arc is going, because everything in nature is developing all the time. So like obviously we're heading somewhere, even if it's to a more advanced human animal form or to something else. And I believe it's something else because like I said, this sexual division is so pronounced in the animal kingdom, and I think our consciousness right now is very telling that we're not 100% animals right now. We have so much other things going on in culture and interest and stuff that are not animal. They're more human, let's say, human in the new human form. So I think this is where we're heading. We're heading further and further away from the animal kingdom and more into this new consciousness. Let's call it the human consciousness. We're heading more into this life form that is based around the human consciousness. And I think in order to be possible, the poles, they has to come together again, like they once were in the plant kingdom. And so I think one day when humanity is ready, like I said, the time scales are enormous, so maybe in a few thousand years or something, the female and the masculine, the poles will join again in order to create this new consciousness that is based not on animalistic principles, but is based on humanity and love and compassion and interest for culture and art and that sort of things. That will be the predominant sort of state of being in this new world. And this new world is sort of what the Bible actually talks about when it talks about the kingdom of heaven and the consciousness that Jesus Christ has. I very much believe in Jesus Christ, even though I'm not Christian per se, but I think he is sort of the ideal human to aspire to be. And I think the way he acts and thinks is, let's say, the common way to express love and understanding between each other in this new kingdom. But it's not possible right now in the animal kingdom that we're part of. we have to reach this new place where we all love our neighbors, and we're all as full of joy and love as Jesus Christ was. I think he came a bit too early to earth to show us the way of the coming new life form. And so Jesus is a huge inspiration in order to reach this. But I think also, to tie it back to these poles, I think Jesus, in order to express that tremendous ocean of love and understanding that he did, he had to have these poles in harmony. Everything that is imbalanced in nature, sooner or later, through ups and downs and through wind and withering and water and corrosion, evens itself out. And this is, again, what I think is happening with the masculine and the feminine, is that, let's take me for example. When I decided to transition, I had, for some reason, and I will go into this in a later video, I think, I have repressed my masculine for different reasons, which causes the feminine to forcefully rise. And it rose too quickly, I think, which made me believe, actually I might be a woman, because all of a sudden this feminine pole had the upper hand in me. And so this explains these strong and deep-rooted feelings of masculinity and femininity that a lot of trans people have. So this, but then sort of when I detransitioned, I sort of realized, hang on, I'm still a male. And I sort of looked at this masculine pole that I had repressed. And as soon as I looked at it, it popped up again. And so I thought, I'm actually a man. I need to denounce everything feminine about myself. So I went 100% the opposite way, which is not good either, because then I repressed the feminine that had sort of started to rise. And I think the most natural or the most peaceful way is not through transition at all. Actually, you should avoid it at all costs. But you should nonetheless acknowledge both your poles inside you, and maybe peek a bit at what's the repressed pole and what's the dominant pole, but express and explore it through art and media and that kind of stuff, instead of going like full blown, I need to be a man, or I need to be a woman, or I need like that's not healthy. It doesn't lead to anything good. So in order to reach this kingdom that Jesus Christ is part of, and that we're all gonna reach one day, we need both poles to even themselves out, but we need to do it in a way that is not forceful or medicalized or based on surgeries. We need to do it in to join them in harmony, like in a peaceful way. So yeah, that's my conclusion, I think. To sum up, the shift in poles itself is not bad. It's supposed to happen, but it's extreme right now and leads to a lot of deviance because of the birth pains of the poles going haywire, up and down all the time in different people. And that's the way it has to be in some people right now, I think, but eventually it will lead to a more harmful way. And this is not to say that everyone needs to have their repressed pole become dominant. Like, that's not what's supposed to happen. That's what leads to trans people, I think, when the opposite pole becomes dominant too soon. So that's not supposed to happen. Your repressed pole is supposed to reach your dominant pole's level, but it's not supposed to take the upper hand. So, like in males, we need to acknowledge the development of the feminine until we reach this level point. And in females, you need to acknowledge the masculine development until you reach this point. And it's not like, it sounds like I'm saying let this much out but not more, but that's not like it's supposed to happen organically and naturally and during a long cycle. It's not supposed to happen in one lifetime, and it's not supposed to lead to any deviance really, or any discomfort. It's supposed to naturally grow throughout our interest. As long as you're focusing on your interests and your humanity and your compassion for your fellow beings and that kind of things, you're on the right track. Like that's the golden ticket to all of this. Listen to Jesus Christ. he knew what to do in order to bring these two in harmony. Like that's the way. You're not supposed to experiment with sexual weird fetishes or transition, or I think it's okay if you do. Like, the world is not going to end if you're transitioning and that kind of thing. But I think it's more extreme than it has to be. Like it doesn't have to be on that level. It can grow more organically throughout a series of lives, and I think it has a lot to do with interests and art and that kind of thing, because it is so tightly connected to this opening up of the consciousness that is happening right now on Earth among the humans. So it's part of, like, when everything that is based on reproduction basically is based on one pole, like your dominant pole, but everything, like basically the animalistic nature is when you're so clearly masculine or feminine that you're basically like 100% an animal, and animals are interested in food, reproduction, basically. That's it. So what happens when they even out, I think, is that all of these other interests start to emerge, and that's wonderful, and that's fine, and it leads to, I think, a better life for all of us, because we can't be happy living as animals, only caring about reproduction and food. That would be to go back in time. Like, we're past that point. We need to look forward to this new kingdom that is filled with love and understanding and peaceful joy and peace, basically. No wars, because wars are also based on like too much separation of these poles. There's too little understanding between people in wars. So stop listening to me. Listen to Jesus Christ and look forward to this kingdom. Thank you.